everybody. We are live from Greenville, South Carolina and Charlotte, North Carolina. Welcome, everybody, to Supercharge Your Project Pursuit with TrebleHook and Procore. I'm John Goff. I'm Director of Business Development. I've been around projects my whole career, really. I started out in the wholesale lumber industry. That was the first half of my career. Transitioned over to technology. I moved down to Austin, Texas. I was working for Oracle database security solutions, and I got an opportunity to join a company for CRM for the construction and design world. Grabbed that opportunity and then had the chance to move to Greenville, South Carolina here and join TrebleHook. So I've been here now for more than 3.5 years, and I've been focused on CRM for the industry for almost 7 now. So today I have a special guest star. For those of you who've been on our webinars before, you're probably used to Chris Fay, president and founder of TrebleHook. I don't know if I'll say like we fired Chris and hired somebody else or not, or if this is a trial or what, but we've got Michael Sproles here, who's the VP of Product Development. So welcome, Michael.
Thank you, John. For those of you out there, my name is Michael Sproles. I've got about 27 years experience in the AEC industry. A lot of that was in the sales and then sales management space. About 8 years ago, I switched over to the Salesforce side and the operations side. I've been kind of focused on that since then. Now 5 times certified for Salesforce. I am the original developer of TrebleHook, and now I manage the team that's responsible for maturing and enhancing the product as you see it today. So thank you, John. Nice. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks, Michael. Good to have you. We'll dive right into the agenda here. We're going to try to keep it tight. Going to give you a look at the platform, but before we do that, we're going to talk about the problems we're solving, really the why behind integrations, our integration philosophy, why specifically Procore and TrebleHook, why we focus so much of our work on that particular integration and why we're here today, how the integration works, talking about the bi-directional nature of our integration, the push and the pull, jump into the demo, come back and talk about some of the value, and then do some Q&A. So quick housekeeping here. Go ahead and you can drop questions or comments in the chat at any point. We've got Mackenzie, who's on the board today. We're usually in the podcast booth, so it may be a little bit clumsier in the handoff. It usually is just a hand signal or something to move to the slides. But today, with Michael being up in Charlotte, we're at our desk today. So we'll move things right along. So diving right into the problems that we're solving for, disconnected systems, siloed data. These are things that come up in conversation all the time. You know, we've got data here, data there. This system doesn't talk to that system. We're trying to do this. We built this integration. It didn't work the way we thought it would. All those kind of things. But Michael, thoughts on the nature of disconnected systems, the siloed data, and if you want to comment on now I may or may not have included, I may or may not be responsible for this visual. It was a divisive kind of image here, but I found it funny. The farmer chasing the getaway data and the siloed data really kind of perfectly encapsulates what this is all about.
Absolutely, John. I think one of the things that we see a lot of companies face is data silos. And that's because you've got data that originates in different sources. The origination source makes 100% sense. The problem is that data is not shared to these other data silos. So a great example is a business development person or a marketing person might be involved with a project during the pursuit phase, but then later they need to get data about that project when it's in its execution phase or from the accounting phase, and they don't have access to that system. So that's the problem. And then they have to go hunt somebody down. That's why the image of the farmer chasing the cow kind of struck me as humorous, because that's what a lot of our users face every day. The data they need to do their job does not always exist in a place that they could access it. So they have to chase that data somewhere. And that takes time. It makes things less efficient. And it ultimately slows down the process.
Yeah. And even if they have access to a particular system, by nature of their job, they're not used to working in that system. It wasn't built for them. So, marketing and business development folks going into project management or accounting system, or they're just not made for them. So it helps to be in a familiar system and one that was built for somebody in your particular role. Yeah. Single source of truth. We talk about this all the time. I think of it like your finance people have the finance system. You've got a financial ERP. That's your source of truth. Your project manager has Procore as your project management solution, or maybe Autodesk. Your estimating team has estimating software. Everybody has software. HR is working in HR systems. They've all got their own source of truth. But when it comes to business development and marketing, specifically the pursuit teams, oftentimes, half of the customers who come on board, they're coming off of spreadsheets. So that's like their source of truth. But then they've got data in Outlook, and they've got data in file folders, and they've got data in people's heads. So what is that single source of truth? Even firms that have a CRM in place, oftentimes there's a bunch of satellite systems that marketing and BD folks are using. Thoughts on that, Michael, as far as the single source of truth?
Yeah, I think what this speaks to me, and I think why it's important for folks to think about it, is that single source, regardless of where the data may originate from, it's really being able to have that data brought together in a central place to make use of it. Data that originates in TrebleHook for the pursuit phase, being able to bring accounting data in for how we bill against that project, bring in execution data from project management, to see the schedules and how those are progressing. All that data is very valuable, particularly for marketing as they're preparing proposals for new projects, sure. Building resumes out for folks and preparing those document packages to send out. They have to go chase this data down because it doesn't exist in one central place. And that's where I think what we're talking about today is so powerful, is because now we're providing a way to get that data painlessly into the right hands at the right time as well.
Absolutely. And that goes right into the next bullet point here, which is time wasted. The time savings in the right system is invaluable. And so marketers specifically looking for data, going to a bunch of different places, trying to find it, calling people, texting, emailing, as well as looking through different systems. And when they find it, like, is this the final proposal? Was this an earlier version? That's a problem as well. So you're wasting a lot of time just running around looking for stuff. I call it hunter-gatherer mode that marketers are in. And then you've got also, more chances for those kinds of errors when you're looking for, is the data up to date? Is it accurate? Is it complete?
100%, John. We see it all the time. One of the earliest things we ran into when we started with TrebleHook with customers is the value of taking a manual process and automating it in the digital age. A quite common one that a lot of our customers use, of course, is submit to startup. And a lot of places we're dealing with, they have a form that somebody has, okay, now we've gotten this project to a certain stage and it needs to be set up in ERP, or it needs to be set up in Procore, or whatever. And somebody's taking a form, they're drawing data from something, putting it on this form, sending it to somebody, and then somebody else is taking that data on the form and then re-entering it into another system. Yep. Guess what happens, John?
They spend a lot of time. It's like the old telephone game where like one person tells another, and by the time you get to the end of the line, it's a completely different conversation.
Oh, yeah. Somebody hits an 8 instead of a B, or somebody hits a 3 instead of an E. Things get mistyped accidentally. Something gets slightly misspelled, and then suddenly things start to get out of sync. You start having duplicates. People don't know if they're in the right project or not. And it's tough to tie things back together between different systems as a result. So being able to automate that is a clear time saver and eliminates a lot of that point of error.
Yeah. And that's the final point that we had on here is the increased potential for errors with multiple manual data entry points. This is probably the one, like I always ask, like when I talk to somebody for the first time, what's the problem we're solving? Like if you came in with a marketing request, you wanted to talk to TrebleHook, how did you find us? What are you looking to accomplish? And one of the top three things almost invariably is cut down on the number of systems and the number of times we have to manually enter data in. It's a real and major pain point for most firms.
Absolutely.
All right. Now on to the integration philosophy. I was going to do these kind of one by one when we started, but figured we'd just put them all up here. There's a lot of different systems you can potentially integrate with. And many times when I have that first conversation, there's like, well, we'd like to integrate with, and then they rattle off like 15 different systems. And you have to kind of go back to like, why, what's the purpose of the integration? What are we trying to accomplish? And the fact of the matter is there are, I don't know, like probably more than this, but at least kind of three levels of integrations in terms of difficulty. You've got the ones that are more or less, plug and play. You've got the ones that require a fair amount of scoping and take a lot of time. There can be a high degree of customization. And then you've got ones that kind of fit in the middle. You need to do a little configuration here or there and that sort of thing. But when you look at the entirety, we always look at there are major systems that we're looking at that are core to all firms that you really want to have the data talking to each other. Usually the financial ERP system and the project management system are typically talking to each other. Sometimes it's going both directions. Sometimes it's going in one direction. But the major systems are around project management and financial systems, financial ERPs. And so couple of examples. So we've got Procore, obviously. We've got Viewpoint, Sage, CMIC. Design firms are using Deltek products and BST. So you've got those are the major systems. Those require customization, scoping, maybe some field, custom field mappings and things like that. Then you've got some other systems that are really valuable. Open Asset is a system that we're a partner with Open Asset. It's a digital asset management system that there's a lot of value getting data from TrebleHook into Open Asset and starting projects in Open Asset. MailChimp, HubSpot, Constant Contact, kind of the front end systems where they're mailing platforms or lead gen platforms. It makes a lot of sense to pull those into your CRM. Outlook, Gmail, you're doing your touch points, you're making phone calls, you're sending out emails. You want to be able to pull that back into your CRM. And then Ignite is a file sharing system that we have a relationship with that we can integrate with as well. So these are some of the major ones, but there are literally thousands of apps that are in the Salesforce App Exchange that want to and are pre-built to kind of integrate with the Salesforce platform on which TrebleHook is built. But Michael, that took me a long time to get here, but talk a little bit about our philosophy when it comes to integrations.
Yeah, so I'll take a little step back and kind of preface this with the fact that, it is not our goal or intention to replace all these platforms, right? I strongly believe that platforms exist because they are the best at what they do, just like our platform exists because we think we're very good at what we do. So we're not necessarily going after ERP or project management. Our focus is really on the pursuit. However, there's value in the data that comes from these other systems in that pursuit. And there's also value for having data from disparate systems coming into a central repository. So I think that's kind of from a high level standpoint, from an integration philosophy, that's what I see important. We even do it ourselves in our company. We use Salesforce, so we're drinking our own Kool-Aid, so to speak. We have it integrated with multiple platforms across our company that our sales teams are using, our marketing teams using, our accounting teams using it, and we're bringing data back into our org so we can make use of it. And we use that in multiple ways, not only in analyzing data. We use it for dashboarding, reporting, because really in our company, nowhere does all that data exist in one spot. And that's the beauty of the integrations, being able to bring all that in together. So to get into the details, kind of what you were talking about, John, is you're exactly right. There's a couple different levels of how complex an integration gets. So, from the low level Outlook, that's a very easy plug and play integration. It's there. We can get you up and running on that in literally less than 30 minutes, right? It's just there. It works. Same thing with Gmail and all that stuff. And that allows you to use the product in another platform. People know how to use Outlook and Gmail and stuff, right? So why take them out of that? They can also reference TrebleHook while they're in that interface. Then you get to the next level, something like, I would say, Open Asset, which is kind of that middle level, which is a little more straightforward, although there is a little bit more syncing and linking that we have to do with that. We're transferring data from one system to another. In this case, we're one direction. We're pushing data, well, two directions. We're pushing some data to Open Asset, but then bringing some data back down to us. The third level, which is probably the most complex, is kind of what we're talking about here today. Procore ERP systems. There's usually a lot of complex work we have to do to kind of build out those systems because the data model between systems is invariably different. Mm-hmm. Everyone we look at is like, okay, they designed it much differently. So we have to do a lot of massaging of the data to get it to fit in our system. And that's part of what we do. And you'll hear us use the term out of the box and then customize. So we have like an out of the box Procore integration, which John's going to show you. But rest assured, we can customize that for additional processes, everything from custom fields to a whole new object if you need it. We can customize additional work to that based on your business requirements. And that's the beauty of working with a vendor such as us, is we have the capacity to do that.
Yeah, that's great. And the fact of the matter is that the Salesforce platform is very open. And so the only real dependency, right, Michael, is the openness of the other system. And most systems are pretty open these days. You'll have some that are a little more difficult to work with. But, as long as we have access to the data, to the fields, then we're ready to rock.
Yeah, most applications today, particularly if they're cloud applications, most of them we run into have a very robust API. What we're doing is not new. It's not unique in that, people are trying to integrate systems in all types of industries. So it's becoming pretty industry standard to provide an API. And generally, as long as that API is there and that API gives us access to certain things, we can work with it. So on our side, Salesforce has a very open API. So there's no object in Salesforce that we can't access via API. So it's usually, like you said, John, a limiting factor. And we have run into it a couple times. If they don't have an API for a particular object, we are limited in that regards. Yeah. But as long as there's an API for it, we can work with it.
Yep. And we haven't run into any restrictions on Procore to this point, have we?
Not to date, no. Yep. So far, Procore's had a very robust API. They've been very supportive to us. We've been able to reach out to them for support. So they've been actually a very good vendor to work with and been very open to helping us with that. So.
Fantastic. So let's talk about how the integration works here. So we've got the push, right, from TrebleHook to Procore. That's going to initiate your project startup. So you're working your projects from lead to win. You need to start that project up. What we're looking at are kind of the big three account contact projects in TrebleHook, moving that data into the appropriate vendor user project category in Procore. But there's a ton of advantages, Michael, to this. You're saving time. You're passing off from one system to another. You're reducing errors. Talk about some of the additional advantages of this push integration.
Well, that's exactly it. Is that reducing the manual entry of data to another system. That's the beauty of it right there, and that prevents errors and improves efficiency because we're not copying data, putting it on a form or email, sending it to somebody, and they've got to recopy it out. By making that a smooth process, it just eliminates all that friction. So now you can focus on what you do best, not data entry. And neither side wants to do that. Not the person sending it and not the person getting it.
Right.
Really enjoys doing data entry. So by doing this, our customers have seen a lot of value just in that. And that's one area that we really stand tall on. It's usually a one-time push where you're starting that project up in Procore. And then once it's there, it is now eligible to be executed by anybody on the Procore team. And as you'll talk about next, then we get into the next phase of the integration, which is bringing data back.
Yeah. And I always think about anytime you can standardize a process, you can standardize all of the data that you're requiring. That I always say, like, everybody doing the same thing the same way at the same time, that sort of thing. So this standardizes your project startup process.
Absolutely. And John, and more importantly than that, it gives a method to validate the data, make sure it's put in the right format. Because anybody could copy something on a form or put something on an email, and if it's not in the right format, they can still send it off. And then it causes somebody else's time to have, hey, John, did you fix it? This is the wrong format for this project number or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So by doing it in a format such as this, we can put in steps to make sure the data is validated. The required things are always filled in before it gets submit. We can put in approval processes along the way that make sure that if it's got to be reviewed by somebody, they get a notification. They go look at it and says, check, check, check. Great, I'll let it go forward. Yep. So we can provide a lot of oversight into the process as well without increasing friction.
That's huge. Yep. Perfect. And so when we talk about the pull, now we've got the data going in the other direction. We're pulling data from Procore into TrebleHook. This is really to give visibility, as you alluded to it earlier. You've got your marketing BD, seller doers, they're involved in the project from lead to win. And then oftentimes it's like, well, what do they look at next as far as viewing progress on the project? Well, the answer is here. You pull back the data from Procore as the project moves through the execution lifecycle, and you're looking at things. Now you're going in the opposite direction: vendor, user, project, all coming back into account, contact, and project. And also, we've got the ability to go in, and we've been picking them off one by one. We've got schedules, schedule data. We've got some cool things on the roadmap. Michael, you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so with any integration, we always start with the basics. We usually start with accounts, contacts, and projects, bringing those over first. Then once we get that working, we start working on other things. So with Procore, once we got those done, we worked on the project team. So in Procore, you folks may be familiar with, the directory for a project. All the people you've got working on a project, we now can bring that back into TrebleHook and give visibility to that to other people in the company, right? As somebody on the project execution team adds 2 new subcontractors to a project, that night, that's going to come in. And when you go to TrebleHook the next day, you go, there's a couple more people there that are working on the project. Great.
Yep.
Now, I don't have to go hunt for the data to say who all is working on that project now. The latest thing we did was brought in schedules. So when you're putting new schedules into Procore, you don't have to update stuff in TrebleHook. That will flow through now, and we can update those dates and milestones for you through that integration sync. Another example of not having to chase the data down. The next thing we've got on the roadmap, as you alluded to, John, is financial. So as the contract is put into Procore, the schedule of values, we're going to be syncing those up. As change orders are created in Procore and they go through their process, when they're approved, we'll bring those over. So in TrebleHook, you'll be able to see up to the day what that project's looking like financially as well. If you're tracking that in Procore, you'll be able to see the prime contract value plus the value of any change orders. So that's next on our list. We'll be working on in Q3.
Yeah, that's going to be huge. I hear a lot of people who are interested in that. And I think the ability to the value, one of the values is the ability to see if the project is actually turning out the way you thought it would. It's kind of like, we thought we were going to make this margin. We thought we were going to be on this schedule. And then reality doesn't always match up with your best intentions. So to be able to kind of compare the estimated what's going to happen with the actuals, there's a ton of value in that as well.
Absolutely.
So, all right, Mackenzie, I think we are ready to go over to the demo part. I have got TrebleHook spun up here as well as Procore. Let's hope this goes as smoothly as we want it to. Sometimes on a Teams meeting, there's a little bit of a delay. We're going to actually start a project up in Procore directly from TrebleHook. So hopefully that syncs in real time here for you. So many of you have seen TrebleHook before. Some of you may have not. So if this is your first look or for a refresher, so we are built on the Force.com platform. You can see that right up there. The layout, this is my home screen. I start out my day, I pull up my version of Salesforce, and this is what I'm looking at. I'm looking at my events, my calendar that's synced. I'm looking at my tasks. I've got my dashboards, my reports that I have here. And then up top in Salesforce lingo, these are all called objects. So accounts, contacts, projects. So you've got accounts and the ability to slice and dice the accounts, like what type of accounts they are in what we call list views. And so you can look at all accounts, my accounts, different types of accounts. Same thing with contacts. You can look at employees, certain types of contacts, if they have birthdays, whatever. Projects is the biggest differentiator of between Salesforce and other CRM systems that are used in the industry. Really, because we've and you'll see here in a second, but we've condensed leads and opportunities as the first and second stages in a project lifecycle, and we have the ability to look at projects the same way, list views of projects. So here I've got pinned my favorite list view, which is potential projects, but I can look at contracted projects. Once you win a project in TrebleHook, it converts over to a contracted project. We can look at those as well. You can break them down by market or industry in any number of ways. For today, Michael has created a nice little quick list here for the Procore demo. That way I'm not using things that have people's actual names or anything like that, and we don't get into trouble. But we're going to go over, so we've got all of these projects here, various statuses, project amounts, stages, etc. One of the really cool things in a list view is the ability to edit the list. You can go in and you can make edits across the list view, the same as you can with reports. But this list view is made up of a list of projects. When I click into a project, this is the Echo Urban Studio Mills Memorial project. So we've pre-filled the stuff so you don't have to wait for me to type everything in. But just to show you the way things work in the system here, we've created an update stage button. The very first stage of a project is a lead. It comes in as a lead, maybe a rumored project, maybe you get a business card. You may not have a lot of details around the project. As you start to move through, now it's a legitimate opportunity. Leads you're not really sure about. Opportunities are pursuits you're going to chase. And so you're going to want to have some additional information around the client, office location, project name, division, person you're talking to or people, and then some information around dates and financials. So opportunity, you're starting to learn more information. Now you're at the proposal stage. You're working on this proposal, say, and you're kind of moving things through the life cycle, and you need to get a proposal out, award contract. Now you're negotiating, you're winning the work. Now at a certain point, and this is where now you can sync a project from TrebleHook to Procore at any point. You may want to track some things before you win a project. There may be some time and people and details that you want to track prior to winning the project, and that's okay. But I've kind of pre-filled everything, and most of the time it's a submit for startup. You kind of hit this stage, and at that point you have to. You're going to start that project up in Procore. You're going to start it up in a financial ERP as well. But the layout of the project page here, and I'm on this project page. I've got the highlights here in the project summary. I've got details. We can have as many or as few details as you want to have. We've got tabs for things like dates that you may want to look at, key dates, financials. The project team is when we want to keep an eye out here for the Procore integration, but we've got documents and images. We can attach marketing details, SF330 codes and marketing descriptions and all kinds of things there. We can track the audit kind of history and any kinds of integrations. But let's just kind of focus here on the details. We've got some fields here. We've filled some things in here. We can see on as far as integrations, we've got a CMIC as an original source for the data here. We've got a project ID associated with that record. We've got an open asset project record here. So we've got everything's ready to go. We won the project. We want to sync this with Procore. So we've got a little drop down here. This allows you to do all kinds of things on the page. One of those things is to sync to Procore. So Michael, here now it pops up. It doesn't go right into Procore. It's asking us to select a project template. What's the purpose here?
So in Procore, those who use Procore know about this. They have project templates. And some customers may have several different types of project templates, depending on what type of project it is. In our situation, we only have one just for the purpose of the demo, but we wanted to show that if you have multiple templates, we can accommodate that.
Perfect. And so it said I would be notified when it's synced to Procore. If I go to my Outlook, at some point when it has synced, it's going to send an email back. Here we go. So it's saying I successfully created the project in Procore, gives me the project ID. You can see the project name here. So that's cool. It's telling me, good job, John. You did what you needed to do. You clicked the button. Congratulations. So then when we go over to Procore, and I'll hit a refresh here. So here we are now. We just synced this over. That was the Echo Urban Studio Mills Memorial Project here. So you can see we've pulled in the project number. We've got the address. We've got the city. We've got the state. We've got the zip. All of that. A quick look back to TrebleHook. So when you're on the project, that's the information. You've got your address information all in there. All of that data that you're pulling in is going right into Procore here.
John, if you could refresh the TrebleHook page for a second too, I just want to point one thing out. Then when it comes back up, scroll down to the bottom, because you should see now that the Procore ID is, so see that project management project ID there?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
That is the Procore ID that Procore creates. Every time any system creates a unique ID for every record it creates, Procore is no different. That's what gives us our link, that number there. Now, when we're syncing night to night, we know which project these two things are matched up between.
Right. That's awesome. And that was the project ID number that I got on my email as well. It had created that project ID number and it told me what that was in my email too. So, yep. Thanks for pointing that out. So now when we go in the, what did I do? I need to go into the project. That's what I need to do.
Yep.
Forgot one critical step. So now.
And just to be fair to everybody, we are not Procore experts. So if you see us stumbling around occasionally in Procore, that's because we don't use it every day.
The extent is when I do demos like this, and that's really all the poking around. I know enough to be dangerous in here. And so, yeah, so when you go in and you're looking at all the project information, so this was brand new. So the fields that I had filled in are pulling over. So you can see the fields that it started. Now you can update fields in Procore. You're doing your Procore thing, scope of work, project delivery method, etc. All the things around project location. It's pulled in the state of Georgia. Even I didn't fill in Turner County. It knew that. So, but Michael, is this all we can do? Or if there are other fields that we want to create in Procore, and pull that data back into TrebleHook, can we do something like that?
Yeah, so kind of going back to what I said earlier, this is what I would call the out-of-the-box implementation of this integration. We can absolutely include additional fields from either side. So we've had several customers that they have custom fields in Procore that they want to populate when they do this. That's fine. We can do that. Some customers have custom fields they had us add in TrebleHook to capture certain data that they want to transfer over to Procore. That's fine. We can handle that. So just because it's not in the out-of-the-box version doesn't mean we can't handle it. One of the things we did this past quarter is we did a lot of work on the enhancements to make it easier to add additional fields to the integration. So we can do that for accounts, contacts, projects, etc. So if you can think of a field that you really want, we can accommodate it.
Nice. And then just to give, sometimes it's easier to get a visual that's outside the system as far as the mappings. So when we're talking about the project startup and pushing data from TrebleHook into Procore for project startup, here we've got all of the out-of-the-box TrebleHook fields at the account level that we're pushing into the Procore vendor, all of the contact information that we're pulling into the Procore user, and then all of the project fields. So you've got additional details around particularly the square footage, if it's new, renovation, addition, address information, actual and estimated, start and complete date. When we're going in the reverse direction and we're going from Procore and pulling data back into TrebleHook, now we've got all of the Procore fields mapped out that are pulling in from their vendor into our account, from their user into our contact, and from their project to our project field. So, and as the project is being updated in Procore, this data is being synced back at the time that it's scheduled. Usually people have it like midnight or whatever when there aren't a lot of people going to be in the system, and this data will sync back.
Yes. So it is, we generally recommend we do it after hours while people aren't in the system, particularly if there's a lot of updates every day. That's a lot of data to come through. However, that can be modified. We can do it multiple times a day if there's a need for it. In a big company that maybe has offices in different time zones, we've got the ability to do some things there as well. So again, out of the box, we generally set it, I think, at 1 a.m., but we're not, that we have the ability to accommodate other requests.
Perfect. And then just kind of real quickly before I leave Procore here. So here you can see the users. This is where your contacts would you can add your users in Procore. That'll update. That's what would update in TrebleHook. And then companies, same thing, adding a company, and so all of your companies would update. And where that's going to update is in your project teams. So your project teams, you've got companies and people. When you build it out, we just have the three because we did this real quick, but you've got accounts. So those are companies, contacts, those are people. And you've got the role on the project as well. Those are your account teams. That's what you can enter that data directly into TrebleHook. And we can potentially at some point, we'll be able to push that data directly into Procore. But for now, what we find most people want is the teams in Procore. And then, Michael, we have the ability to throttle that too, right?
Yes. Yeah. So out of the box, we bring all the directory over when you add people to a project in Procore. However, we've had a few customers say, hey, we only want, in one instance, we only want our internal users that are attached to a project to come over. Okay, we can do that. That's fine. So we have the ability to do, some, or we can do all.
Nice. So, Michael, everybody out there, if you have any questions on this, we're gonna bounce out. That's the just what we wanted to show you as far as the integration here and how it how we play with Procore. Mackenzie, we'll just kind of go through here and talk one more time. Go through the value and just kind of summarize that, and then we'll get to questions at the end. But let's talk through some of these points here that we've touched upon as we've gone through.
Sure. Yeah, so we talked about a scheduled project sync that keeps data current. That's simply put that we know every night we're going to bring over any new information or changed information from the other system, in this case Procore, into TrebleHook. So next morning, you know that you are looking at the latest and greatest information. So as your project teams are executing out there in the field and adding things and managing their projects, we're going to bring that data in every night and make sure that you have access to the most updated data. So when you're running a report or you're looking at a project to add to a proposal resume or something like that, you know you're looking at the latest info.
Yep. And then faster project ramp up and handoff. We talked about that.
Yeah, the project push is a great example of that. Just reducing those manual inputs saves a lot of time and reduces the error, which saves time downstream as well.
Yep. And then time savings.
Kind of same thing, the automatic project creation. Yep. We're replacing a manual process with a digital process.
Yep. And then this one around consistency and complete project records across both systems. That goes to the standardization and compliance if you want to put in some things that are going to be standards for the firm, that this really puts rails around all that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then, we can validate data coming in, going out. We can do a lot of things to make sure that data is formatted correctly, that it matches your company standards, et cetera, and to make sure that some necessary data is actually there and it can't be skipped.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and even things like, states, SC or South Carolina, just having the data all the same, so that way when you're moving it around, it's going to match up in another system. And I see like different, a lot of variety in terms of data quality and cleanliness as we're moving people off of other systems. And this is just you can really keep it clean and consistent. It's a huge bonus.
Really.
And then we're streamlining and standardizing workflows across teams and increasing. Yeah, I don't know as we've talked really about cross-functional alignment as much, but I think of, so two things, like teams alignment. So you've got your internal teams where it's like handing off from one team to another, where one, pre-con's doing their thing. They're working with marketing and BD. Marketing's getting the proposal out. You win the project. It goes to project management. It goes to the financial team. But there's also kind of when I saw the cross, it made me think of kind of cross-selling opportunities too. There's a lot of things in terms of the data and the value of the data and being able to pull things back into TrebleHook with that pull from Procore that really lets you get into the more in-depth analytics as well. We haven't talked about that in a lot of detail, but the analytics value that comes from this is huge. And there may be additional opportunities, upsell, cross-sell, identifying your ideal project profile, where you're making the highest margins, what projects are more susceptible to holdups and, running over schedules and budgets and things like that. There's a ton of value in the data that we're tracking to be able to, that otherwise you would not know, right? If you didn't have a system that was capable of analyzing that data.
Yeah, and that goes back to the data silos where, in a traditional environment, somebody wants to see some reports and dashboards on something. Well, I've got to go to this system to get this information, but then I've got to go to this other system to get that information. We bring it all together in TrebleHook, and you can see all that data together. You can have a unified dashboard that you can come in and it's running the latest data, and it's bringing that data in from other sources as it needs.
Absolutely. Yep. And we've got one more, Mackenzie. Unified account contact management. Yeah. Just making sure it's all the same.
The data validation. There's no mistypings, and it helps reduce duplicates. We see this a lot. A company is named one thing in one system. It's got a different name in another system because it's abbreviated. Yep. And in a third system, it's got yet even a third way to put the name. So by doing something like this, we're actually enforcing that data standards and making sure that everything is the same no matter what system it's originating in.
Yep. 100%. Yeah. And the numbers say ABC company is Abbott, Brown, and Caldwell. It is just listed two different things. So, all right. Well, very good, Mackenzie. We have reached the end where we've got some time for questions here if you all do.
Yeah, Don, I've got a message here asking if we could explain how licensing works and do people need a license for each platform?
So I'm not an expert on Procore licensing, but I do know you need a license for TrebleHook, and Procore is a volume-based, revenue-based model as far as their is how they sell the product. But in terms of Procore and TrebleHook, in TrebleHook, you need a TrebleHook license. You can be a viewer and have there's different kind of license types. So view-only licenses, which are less expensive than full licenses, obviously. Full licenses give you full edit and access rights, and you would need that type of a license to be able to get into the project, edit and update projects, update the project lifecycle, and sync that project with Procore. So that's how it works on our side. Michael, from your perspective?
Yeah, so I think, so on the Procore side, and again, just put the caveat, I'm not a Procore expert, so I don't sell Procore. But for the integration, the company would need at least a license or access to Procore in those projects. Outside of that, like a marketing person would not need a Procore license to see that Procore data come into TrebleHook.
Right,
so
right.
only the people using Procore need to have an active license. The people seeing the data on the TrebleHook side, the data is in TrebleHook at that point. Anybody in TrebleHook can see it.
Yeah, good point.
Does that? I hope that answered the question, I guess.
If not, just let us know. Yeah.
Another question here, will the program integrate with projects on the bid board or just the portfolio projects?
Today, it's just a portfolio. That is something we've earmarked for the future development, the bid board. That's kind of one of our roadmap objects. So I don't know when we'll get to that, probably sometime in 26. But so today, it is just the portfolio projects.
Yeah, we've got billing or financials and change orders coming up.
Financials and stuff is coming next.
Have that next. So once we jump on something, we're pretty quick to accomplish it. So that'll be first half of Q3 coming up here, Michael. I think somewhere in there.
The plan.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. Any others,
All right,
Mackenzie?
looks like just one more.
One more.
Someone asking, is it better to do the Procore integration when you implement the CRM or to wait until after?
That's a good one.
I'll say my personal opinion, and some people may differ, but if you're implementing TrebleHook fresh, meaning you don't have TrebleHook before and you're coming in and you want to integrate it to Procore, my personal opinion is it would be best to work on the integration at that same time. The main reason is because that integration will help populate the data in TrebleHook initially. So we just did this with a customer. They just went live last week, and the data we populated TrebleHook with was their Procore data. So it was their historical projects and their current projects as well. So they weren't coming in from another system. So it just made sense. So I would recommend doing it at the time. The other consideration for why I would say doing that is even if you're bringing it from, say, like another CRM, or bringing it in from spreadsheets or something like that, and then we want to implement Procore later, we have to figure out at the beginning, we need to know that because we need to do things in such a way to prevent duplication when we do the integration with Procore. So if we know there's Procore coming, then we'll make sure that when we bring things over from another system, say like your old CRM, we'll try and look for Procore IDs or links already that we can put them in TrebleHook to start with. So when we integrate Procore, we're not creating duplicates of accounts and projects that may already be in TrebleHook. So personally, I think it's best to do it during the initial implementation, but every customer situation is different, and we would kind of talk with you and discuss that at that time.
Yeah. And I would say too, I mean, there is no wrong way. I have a lot of customers who, when they come on board, they're like, we just want to focus on driving utilization. We're going to have a small team. We envision we're going to need 20 users, but today we want 5. We want our BD and marketing folks and maybe a couple of view licenses, and we're going to start small just to build the system. We've got a core group of people. We're going to work on the implementation, get all your project pages, your field namings, and your pick lists, and all of that. Like, you get that done, and then we'll move on to phase 2 when we kind of want to take the next bite of the apple. So no wrong way of doing it. I totally get what Michael's saying from an implementation perspective, just to kind of know what's coming. But if we do know that, down the road that there's going to be that interest, then there are some things that we can do just to kind of prepare to.
Absolutely. Yeah, it just gives us the heads up that we know it's coming at some point, even if it's not going to be done right at the beginning, so we can do things a certain way to make sure that that's smooth in the process. I will say our last implementation we just went live with a customer, the integration actually beat the implementation team. So we were actually ready with the integration before they were done with the org. So I was actually kind of excited about that.
Way to pat yourself. Don't strain yourself patting yourself on the back with that one, Michael. So great job. But hey, Mackenzie, did any other questions come in while we were answering the final question, or are we calling it a wrap?
Yeah. Nope, we got one more that popped up super quick. Just asking, do we price per integration, and does the TrebleHook team manage the integration for the customer, or is there a customer responsibility there as well?
It's a good one. Michael, you want to field?
Yeah, I'll jump into that. So right now, we price at the enterprise level. So John goes through this all the time. We've got 3 levels of TrebleHook. There's starter, professional, and enterprise. To do an integration, you need to be on enterprise. So we don't necessarily charge per integration for the license. Now, we do charge for extra integrations for the service. But if you go to enterprise and do an enterprise implementation, your first integration is included in that. I think I'm saying that correctly, John. Correct?
Yeah. So
and then if there's another one, we would charge for the service for that other one.
Correct. Yeah. And it could be it may not be the same for each integration too. Like some might be easy, some might be more difficult. Some so we just kind of right size it. And if you want a couple integrations and we don't know all that, and you've got a whole bunch of users, we just kind of take it all into consideration when we're pricing it all out. But your license cost is your license cost. You do need to be on the enterprise license, as Michael said. And then we're just very upfront, whether we do it today or we do it tomorrow, we're very upfront and transparent in terms of what we're going to charge you.
Now, the second part of that question was asking about the responsibility. So we are generally, we are the admins for your TrebleHook org. We do work with customers and we give them a certain level of access. But generally, because honestly, we live in this stuff day in, day out. Our team, I've got, 2 developers on my team. Our implementation team has 1, 2, 3, 4 folks plus their manager. So we've got, 8, 9 people that are dedicated to Salesforce and TrebleHook. And because of that, we know these things inside and out. So when there's a problem, we can handle it very quickly. And that's no different on the integration. We generally use we'll call it a middleware that kind of handles the data transfer back and forth. And we build in monitoring that if something fails one night, we get a notification in our technical support system internally that shows up next morning and say, hey, customer ABC, their integration failed last night. Go check it out. And then we'll jump on that and we'll let you know, hey, looks like something went sideways last night. We're jumping on it. We already know about it. We're going to see what's going on and we'll get that fixed.
Yep. All right, Mackenzie, any last minute surprises? That's
it. That's everything.
That's it. Well, that's a wrap. Well, I've really enjoyed this. Michael, I think we might invite you back. This was pretty good. Think we I
was glad to do it. I enjoyed this.
We might tell Chris he doesn't have to come and do this anymore. So great job. Thanks, everyone. Really appreciate a lot of folks signed up. I hope you got a lot of value out of this. Let me know if you have any follow-up questions or if there's anything I can help you with. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.